think we're live.
Mm-hmm.
All the green room backstage stuff is really stressful, so at least now we're all here together. Welcome everyone. So we're talking Deconstructing the Novella, which is a title I picked because it could mean whatever we need it to mean. And we have four writers here who have constructed novellas, and I'm hoping that we can also talk about tearing them apart in the most enjoyable way possible. My name's Dave Ring. I'm a writer and an editor of speculative fiction, and I'll give people a second to do their homework, and I'll pretend that the teacher is not looking. Looks good. Okay, we're ready-ish. So I want to kick it off with the first of our true-false statements, which is a novella is never a novel. True or false? Oh, I'm really appreciating that we have conflict immediately. I was not sure. True. Are we split? Half and half? We're having stream issues. I don't know what that means. Well, we're having stream issues, which means that people may or may not have witnessed the first. It's not going on the website.
Well, that's good.
We're not live. And this is our first fight, so maybe it's good that it's not being broadcast because we might need to work through this in private.
Yeah. Also, Dave, reminder: I can't see what anybody else has for their sign. So.
Oh, sorry. I'll narrate better.
Okay. Thank you. It's so awkward.
Well, at least that means the vamping for finding a true false sign probably didn't make it, right? That's good.
Now you look really prepared.
I think we should still assume that someone is able to watch this successfully and that they're admiring our repertoire. Yes, there are ways around the website. So should we just keep going, or do you want us to hang tight until you figure out the stream issues?
I just very successfully read everything backwards, so I feel really, really proud of myself. Carry on.
Yeah, that's what I just did.
Oh, is it because does the video, does it get mirrored?
Yeah. It should be mirrored for you, so it'll look backwards to you, but it's actually right side for us. So writing it backwards is actually more confusing than if you put it front ways. You're seeing it wrong, we're seeing it right.
I'm just gonna, you guys, just kidding.
I feel we should have just have done a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Let me grab a Sharpie so I'm not ruining my last good 10 doing this.
I love that we're all going to be doing art during the panel. I wonder if we should make paper dolls.
Ooh.
Eric, you're going to tell us when we're good to go, right?
Have I covered all of my bases?
They have all vanished. We are adrift.
Cool.
In the meantime, I can go thumbs up, thumbs down. I feel like, yeah, I really feel we're having this kind of arts project.
I can ask different questions, like eggs are the best breakfast.
Hmm.
Just give a thumbs down from, you know.
I'm proud of this.
False. So there's false across the board, except L is reserving judgment with a little bit of a sideways thumb.
If you didn't want somebody here to be difficult, you shouldn't have invited me.
Intra-panel tension. And I've been thinking about ways that folks can like work on panel visuals. And one thing we could have done was all like wear the same color or something. And it's almost happening a little bit with Nino's nails and Ebony's earrings, but the rest of us didn't get the memo. So next time.
Clearly not. Oh.
Didn't read the room.
All right, sounds like we're good to go.
All right.
So this is still Deconstructing the Novella. I'm still here with 4 novellaists, which is not a word, but it is now. And we still are torn on whether or not novellas can be novels. So I feel like if we can have someone for and against, I'm curious to hear what people are. I like rules, so I feel like for me the answer is false, but I'm happy for someone to tell me otherwise.
Anybody remember what I said?
You were false with me, Al.
That's correct, because false is the correct answer. Okay.
Okay. I don't know. I also, okay, so for everybody watching, I can't actually see anybody else's video, so I'm sorry if I interrupt you because I can't see if you're going to speak. But here's my defense. A novella is sometimes a novel, and novels are sometimes novellas. And I'm really just basing this on this one book list I found on, oh God, what was it? bookriot.com, which is not, I guess, you know, like a real legal entity. They don't have like the ability to like judge for everybody. But there were so many books on there that I did not realize were as short as they were. For example, Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson, A Clockwork Orange. Let's see. Oh, and then there's like a whole bunch of sort of like things that we consider like sort of like classic like 11th grade English, like, you know, reading materials that we have to look at, like The Bridge of San Luis Rey, for example. Like, these are all novellas as well. Bartleby the Scrivener, that was the one that I was like, I absolutely did not read in 11th grade. But like, so all of these are novellas technically by word count, but have been considered novels forever. So I don't really know like if there's actually any kind of good defining line. And if there is, I don't know if it's actually the word count. So that's my rant.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of team false. I mean, I feel the same as Nina, right? Which is the a lot of the classics, newer books, you know, it's not just limited to like the past, fall into what I call for me the kind of humongous it's a book category, right? It sort of becomes this chunk of words. And I'm also I can see that there's a great difference, for instance, between a short story or novelette and a full book, right? And then the boundary for me gets a whole lot blurrier in terms of, is this a novel? Does this count? Does this not count? And then there's obviously, you know, age issues, which is like what is considered, you know, a novel for like a 12-year-old is actually not at all an adult novel in terms of length. So I guess I'm at the stage of like, it feels a little arbitrary to me, even though at the same time I can see that novellas have, you know, a certain tightness and inner coherence. And I want to say lack of sprawling, but that makes it sound like a negative thing, right? This kind of laser focus that you can find in a really tightly plotted and tightly packaged work that should feel different, but I'm a heretic. I'm just like, hey, it's cool. It's a book. I like it.
Point taken. And then for folks who are supporting the distinction?
Having just invented an entire new awards thing, word count is where the divider is for me. You would not nominate something that was 50,000 words in the novella category. You would not nominate something that's 30,000 words as a novel. And I didn't make these rules. I just, use them to structure other things. So, if at some point that extension changes, then so be it. But if the category has been created, then whatever the parameters are for those categories, that's what it is.
Again, the rules are comforting, right?
Yes, 1,000%. I need the line, which is why the word count is helpful to me. Like, that's okay. I'm in a category, it's a novella, it's this length that, that's a wide range of words, but I feel like that's important. And maybe that makes me a little bit, I don't know, type A about it. I can admit my faults. I'm okay with that. I like knowing there is a specific word count, and everything over that is something else. And I feel like actually I have more like loosey-goosiness about everything under a novella, right? Like that novelette, short story thing, like mushy. But novella to novel feels a little bit firmer.
I like that we finished with the two people that I agree with. So that's a great transition point for me. So let's just slide over. I'd love y'all, you've all written at least one novella. Can you tell folks a little bit about yourself and where you got your novella writing cred? And it's hard to go around in a table. So Nina, let's have you go first because you can't see anybody else.
Thanks for that. Hi everyone, I'm Nino Cipri. So at this point I have written 2 novellas, or published 2 novellas, and I have them here with me. This is
You guys appear to be alive again.
Oh, cool. I'm glad that this was like what everybody gets to see. So I wrote a novella that was published this year, Fina, with Tor.com Publishing. I also wrote a novella that's in my short story collection, Homesick, and that one is called Before We Disperse Like Star Stuff. I'm also in the process of writing, or revising, I guess, Fina's sequel. I literally just was outlining it before this panel started, and I will go right back out to re-outlining it when we are done. So yeah, I love writing novellas, and I love reading them as well.
Cool. Let's go to Elle.
I'll do this writer, editor, problem browser, etc. I've already done a panel today, so I feel like I'm reintroducing myself to people, and I hate repeating myself, so that's where we are. I am the author of exactly one novella, Ruin of Shadows, which came out a couple of years back, but if you have not discovered it yet, you probably should. But I'm biased. And yeah, that was solicited from me by the publisher. And it's sort of a character vignette of a historical era within a larger novel trilogy that I wrote. And I found that novellas can be really good mediums for that in terms of, content, how thoroughly you can get into a single character as opposed to having to put too much additional energy into history and outer worlds, things like that. And I think novella length is my favorite length to read for that reason.
Cool. Elliot, do you want to go?
Sure. So I've written a bunch of novellas. I'm the author of the Suya Universe series, a bunch of which are actually novellas, and one of which the Tea Master and the Detective won the Nebula Award. I tend to gravitate towards the length, really, because I think it's like the perfect length for like actually giving me space to play around in a universe that I really like, right? Getting some characters on the road, getting a storyline that's a little more complex. With a short story, I really always feel like, or a novella, I really always feel that I'm sacrificing something between plot, character, and world building. With a novella, I feel like I can indulge in all three to my general satisfaction. I am not by nature a short writer, so I also like having the extra space. I have one that's coming out in October, which is Seven of Infinities, and I'm working on another one, which is no title, but it's queer pirates, it's in space, and hopefully it will actually remain novella length rather than tip over into that other thing that may or may not be novellas, depending on who's on the panel.
Love it. Ebony, you want to answer last?
I'm Ebony. I am a writer from the Bay Area. I have this lovely novella over here. Let me grab it, actually. Stone and Steel, coming out September 5th from Neon Hemlock. So that's my whole novella cred, is this singular thing right here in my hands. But yeah, I think like everyone else, I love this length because you do get just enough space to play without feeling like, I get, maybe this is personal to me, but without feeling like I'm adding words that aren't necessary to some degree, right? Like you're telling just enough of the story and you don't feel like you have to throw in a bunch of extra things to kind of pad it to get to the right number. I can sort of stay in that nice place I like to live in, which is too long for novelette short story, but not quite long enough for a novel.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have another true false, which can be thumbs up, thumbs down, if that's easier, or you can hold up one of your signs and I'll try to read it forward or backwards. All right. A novella is too short for complex world building. True or false? We have a false, a false, a false. Falses across the board. I feel compelled to advocate for true, but I don't actually agree with that. So I actually did think someone might be inclined to say like, it depends. Does anyone want to advocate for it depends? A little bit. Okay, but not so much.
If you desperately need a devil's advocate,
I
sure we could, but.
Well, basically, go on.
I think it just really depends on what you mean by complex. Is that like way too like narrowly focused? But like, I think there's a big kind of like wide variety in what people think of as like complex world building. I think for me, when I think of complex world building, I always go to the Tensor series by Neon Yang, which I feel like is an incredibly well built out and fairly complex world. And it is told over a series of like 4 novellas instead of 1. Wait, am I supposed to be arguing for you can't do that?
Just keep talking.
I'm so sorry. I got really distracted by just how great those books are. But I do think, somebody, I don't remember who in their introduction mentioned like that you do need to have a kind of like laser focus in novellas. And I'm probably not a good person to like try to devil's advocate this anyway, because I am not a very complex world builder. But I do think like you have to sort of like limit the amount of information that you can really not necessarily develop, but like impart to your audience. I'll put it that way.
That's interesting. Does anyone have a follow-up? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing a thematic follow-up on the it depends, I feel you have fewer words. So the question is, what are you using them on? Because like really, I'm an engineer, so I will apologize for, the whole budget kind of thing, or not, right? That's just, but anyway, so what I'm trying to say, I guess, is everything costs you words, right? If I want to develop a deep sense of who the characters are and have this complex, non-archetypal, non-cliche character, and if I want to have several of them, it's going to cost me words. If I want to have a world that is not, okay, I'm going to put intuitive between quotes, right? Because it depends a lot on who you're talking to, what are the assumptions of your audience, and all sorts of things, right? But in general, anything that deviates from a kind of quote intuitive understanding is going to require more words. Anything that's not been done before in genre, right? Because to some extent, we also rely on a shared language, and shared language is built through the books that have gone before us, or the media that has, you know, all the stories that everybody hears. Well, the target audience at any rate. If I want to have a complex plot with lots of reversals and lots of twists, also going to take space. So if I want all of this and the complex world building, yeah, probably a novel, right? So I feel if I love complex world building, so and this is why I end up with novellas, partly, right? Because you need space. I need space. I can't just say, oh, right, so, you know, to take just my queer pirate society, I was like, well, they're on this planet, and then there's these asteroids, and this is how you enter pirate society, and these are the rules of contracts, and this is how the society is layered, and okay, well, none of this is, you know, it's not going to be in the reader's mind. I'm going to have to spend those words on the page, and that's where the length of part of the length of the novella actually goes. So to me, it feels very much like a question of authorial choices, to some extent.
I love that kind of summary, and like authorial choices and like the spending of words and where you want to spend them. It reminds me of those memes that, you know, you can have these for your film festival or music festival, and you have to pick people because it's, you know, there's finite attention and finite words. That's great. Talking a little bit about like, I think it's great to talk about the Tensorate series, because I wanted to kind of go into other novellas that we found or discovered that have like really worked for us. When I sort of got into the publishing game and asked writers what they saw as a need in the market, novellas came up. And that worked for me because the Tensorate novellas, Kelly Robson, Lucky Peach, and then also like Elle's novella from Dancing Star was the one that made me go, I want to make these and put these into the world, because it was just such a cool object and like experience to, you know, shove it into your head on an afternoon. So I'm just curious, what are some recent novellas that have moved y'all, and like who put them out? Like, where'd you find them, and like what'd you like about them? Yeah, anyone who looks animated can go first.
I don't know what that means, but I started to mute myself as you said that. So one of my favorite novella series right now is the Wayward Children series, and I literally just finished listening to the last book, I think last night, in that series by Shannon McGuire. And I think I just like really love this like tightness that I think we've all been talking about within the novella, that you're allowed to have, and like a focus on one particular character as opposed to 10 characters. Maybe it's just my brain that's like, I can't follow what happened to this guy 2 chapters ago. And I need to just focus on this singular human being and enjoy their ride through whatever it is we're going through. So like that series is really enjoyable to me, or the Kaya Shanti Wilson series are a ton of fun. And I think yeah, definitely you can see the influence in Stone and Steel, the same way A Ruin of Shadows is a definite influence on Stone and Steel. And I love all of those. And I am super excited about the fact that the novella is getting more and more like love and play right now, because I actually think it makes the genre more approachable, right? That like having to look at these huge 500 page plus things makes it feel impossible to actually dive in and feel like you actually can be in conversation with other people in the fandom. Whereas a novella, like quick in, quick out, you can read it in a sitting, you could read it over the course of 2 days, however long you want to take, but it's a little bit tighter and a little bit easier for folks to say, I'm going to try this and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I just finished Time War because I'm getting caught up on all of my Ignite Award nominees now. So that one's pretty deserving of all the acclaim it's gotten so far. Lucky Peach, I'm a huge fan of, and before I'd actually written one, I was like, that's what I was like shoving in people's faces. Yes, this is cool. Anything Pete Jelly Clark does with Tor, Ring Shout is the latest thing I read. Black Odds Drums, Haunting Tram Card 15. Yeah, all like just like amazing. And I think I have at this point more recently published novellas to rec to people than I do novels, which is, I mean, I think it also speaks to like the amount of time I have available to actually read. But yeah, those are all great.
So a really nice thing about writing novellas is that people have now started sending me novellas to Blurb, which is wonderful because I just get free books. One of which is published by Dave's press, Neon Hemlock.
We put that blurb on the cover.
I know. I love this blurb. I felt really good about this blurb too. I love this book, Queens of Noise by Lee Harlan. Another one that I read before it was published was The Four Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg. It completely tore my heart apart and then just put it back together. And it's a wonderful novella. And I think it's out now or is coming out very, very soon. I have so many books here. I actually grabbed like a stack of my novellas from my bookshelves, which is the nice thing about online cons. Depart by Sim Kern is a really interesting, very near future cli-fi, I hate that phrase, but novella that takes place in Houston after a devastating hurricane and flood.
Remind me who put out Sim Kern's one?
It is, I should know this. It's right here. Hold on, give me one sec. Stellaform Press.
Yeah, Stellaform.
Yeah, they're a really interesting small press. I feel like there's a lot of really, like, I know that Tor.com obviously is like kind of one of the big people putting out a lot of novellas right now. Clark's World, all of these sort of like kind of like the big mainstream, big name, like prosines and semi-prosines. But there's all of these amazing small presses that are putting them out too. Oh, like Queen of Swords Press, The Voyages of Cynarak, The Dapper by AJ Fitzwater. AJ, I think, also has another novella that just came out that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. But those are a few. I'm also reading, speaking of Tor.com, I'm reading Amy Ogden's forthcoming novella, Sun Daughters, Sea Daughters, which is like a queer retelling of The Little Mermaid in space, which I just lost my mind over when I know it. Yeah, and it's so good. It's so good so far. I love it. It's perfect.
I love when a summary of a book is then you add in space on the end.
I mean, when I heard the in space, I think I just went on a Twitter rant about how amazing that was. And then the editor reached out to me and was like, do you want to read it now? And I was like, yes, I do.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, I find a lot of novellas with friends really, and Twitter recs, and you know, as Nina's saying, there's lots of very like in genre. Tor.com is a bit like the behemoth of like putting out novellas that are really great. But I feel like there's a lot of small press, indie publishing, like people that may not have the same marketing reach, but yet that you still, you know, enjoy books from. Well, I still enjoy books from. Because of the novella / novel thing, I'm always a little confused about what I read, which actually counts as a novella or not. I think the last few romances I read were actually longer than novellas, unfortunately, though they were very good. Stuff I enjoyed recently was Empress of Salt and Fortune by Ngivo, and I actually read that a while ago, but it's a really lovely meditation on who gets to write history and what it means and how the history that's being written compares with actual memories and actual accounts of it. Also, you know, War Mammoth, Imperial Intrigue, slow simmering revenge. So that basically was really great for me. I also, in a completely different genre, I actually enjoyed Tade Thompson's Murders of Molly Southbourne and the sequel, which are this kind of very creepy, yes, thank you. So it's about this woman called Molly Southbourne who's, whenever she bleeds, she generates a clone, and the clone tries to kill her. So obviously this leads to a deeply messed up life, and some really, really superb, in a really creepy way, body horror. And so you can, horror is actually not my thing, but it's not, it deals as well with issues of free will, of how much you are beholden to the people that came on before you, how much individuality you have, that kind of pull between individualism and duty to your community that I think is quite interesting. And there's going to be a third book, I think, or am I mistaken? I don't know. So anyway, so there's 2 books out. And another one I really enjoyed was The Order of the Moon Reflected in Water, which is by Zen Cho, and it's a kind of it's a behind the scene wuxia, basically.
A few of those are in my bookshop cart right now, so it's making me yearn to push that button. Elle, I think you kicked us off on this one, right? No? Did you have thoughts on this one?
That was Ebony.
Then talk to me. Who are your favorites?
I already said mine. I said Timor, P. Jolly Clark, his stuff, and Lucky Peach.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I didn't skip you. I was racing.
Yeah. You're good.
Oh, okay, then let me skip to my next true and false then. So I don't even know if this is controversial or not, but I'm trying so hard. Okay, a novella is easier to write than a novel. True or false? Ebony's undecided. And then a true and a false, and then Nina's not even playing. Nina's like, I will not do this.
It's all hard. Everything is hard.
Everything is hard. But wait, who?
I'll say that I think it depends on which way you're coming at it from. So I was writing novels before I started writing anything short, and then from anything short started writing novellas. And I think going back to writing novels after having done a bunch of short fiction pretty much like consecutively, it's harder to justify larger word counts knowing the world that you can create with so few words. So I think had I started out with short fiction and then like gradually worked my way up, I think it might be different. But I'm having an easier time going from writing novel to novella than I think I would otherwise.
That's interesting. Elia, you looked like you had a thought.
Oh, me? I think basically, since I'm so heavy on the world building, I do the same work, whether it's a novella or a novel. So I kind of feel like, for me, plotting comes. I'm not going to say comes fairly easy because it's still like, pulling teeth and all that. But it still feels to me like the bulk of the time I spent is on world building and how all those pieces come together. So to me, it feels very much like I'm doing all the same work up front, and then it takes me a slightly shorter time to write a novella, but the difference is kind of inconsequential in terms of how much time is actually involved.
That makes sense with your process. Yeah. Ebony, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think my thought is it depends, right? And maybe this is true for a lot of people, that I think depending on the project, it can feel really easy to write something longer, or it can feel really easy to write something shorter. And so I would say neither is like, the answer is there is no rule here. Yeah. It is both difficult to write generally, and also not any more difficult, I guess, to write one or the other.
That's interesting. Like word count, like every word is a struggle for me. So like longer always feels more daunting, but I know other people have the opposite problem. So
I think, sorry, can I just add?
Yeah.
Is that I think to Elle's point, it does sort of depend which way you're going too, because I think if I'm trying to write something short, I always end up with something longer. If I'm trying to write something longer, I always end up with something shorter. So maybe that's why to me it feels like it's a struggle either way, because I'm either trying to add more words or I'm trying to cut more down so I can get to the right length.
Yeah, that makes sense. It looks like we have 15 minutes or so. So let me ask this last question, which y'all kind of are taking us right towards anyway. And then we have at least one question from the chat, so we can throw that in there at the end, and we'll see if any more trickle in. But are there like particular craft lessons that you have learned as a writer from writing and reading novellas? Any insights into either plotting or story arcs that you've like found helpful, or any pitfalls that you've had to like dig yourself out of?
You can't have too many characters in a novella. Rune of Shadows was originally, there was 13 assassins involved, and that was way too many. And that got cut down to 7. But yeah, you can tell, and I think the practice of writing novellas could also be applied to novels, in that you can probably do without that third perspective. There are, if you have 20 or something characters in a novel, there's like 5 or 6 that you can probably cut out and make other characters stronger by sort of absorbing them a little bit. So I think with novellas, there's a bit more of a structure to it. You see that people who write novellas can literally go on for multiple hundreds of pages, and tell about as much story as would be valuable in a novella. So yeah, I just think it's a question of structure, of how much story you think you can fit into so little space.
I like that character lesson. It's like the opposite of Molly Southbourne.
Technically, that's one character, so it's one person.
I haven't read it yet. I don't know if I'm funny or not. It just seems vaguely relevant. Any other lessons or pitfalls?
I think there is something to this, like, we were talking about the economy and like how you use words. There is something to that about writing the novella, which is you have to decide what's important to you. I am planning a wedding, so I'm thinking about this in wedding mode, which is that like you have to kind of decide what are the key things you want to pay for, and you have to think about that with words. What are the key things you want to pay for, and what can you put to the side? And if it makes it in, great. And if it doesn't, oh well, I'll be fine and I can live with that. And I think that's true of writing a novella as well, that you have to think about, right, like, is this relationship really important to me? Is putting in all of this world building really important to me? With me, it's always the relationship. So like, that's an easy decision. But yeah, I think that's one of the key things about writing a novella. Whereas I think in a novel, you do sometimes have more room, right, to say like, I'm going to add in everything and everything is going to get played. And sometimes that's a great thing and sometimes it's not.
I mean, I just want to, I guess, co-sign all of that. And the point earlier about what are you spending words on? World building, character relationships. You can't, I've also seen a lot of novellas that have really interesting experiments in like form and structure, but you don't necessarily get the same amount of world building with that. It's a great form to experiment in, but the experiments have to have a focus to them that I think, as other people have said, like you can do like multiple experiments at one time in a novel, but like with a novella, it does have to sort of like the focus has to be a little bit narrower, which is I think like a strength, but also like sometimes a drawback, because sometimes you just get really excited about all the things that you want to do.
For me, I think it's sometimes I tend to approach novellas as a short story, so I don't necessarily go for the full immersion. And then there's been a couple where I have, like in The Vanishes Palace, which is technically a novel, but by about 4,000 words, and the one I have coming from Tor.com, Fireheart Tiger, where I finished it and I realized that although all the plot made sense, the character arc I was not actually invested deep enough in the character arc, and you could tell because nobody was feeling actually engaged enough with the story. And so my beta readers came back to me and said, like, the payoff at the end does not work. And so I ended up taking both of them apart and was like, okay, so here are those little bones of story that I actually have. What do I do with them, right? How do I actually wire a decent skeleton? But more than that, how do I dig enough into the character that readers feel invested enough in them? Because for me, with a short story, with the economy of word and the fact that it's short, I don't feel as much of a need to deeply invest the reader and hold their attention, because I can do other things to hold that attention, right? And a lot of my novellas are actually character-based, so that doesn't work, because if I'm gonna, spend those words on the character, then they have to actually, my reader has to feel something towards the character. It can be, I hate their guts and I really want to see how they get out of that one, but it can't be indifference though, or confusion as to like what the hell is going on. So I think that's one of the ones I keep having to learn.
That's a good one. Yeah, indifference is the worst.
Sorry, everybody. My cat decided to crash the panel.
We're all appreciating.
Okay, good.
Yeah, cat crashing is always welcome.
He knows when I'm on a Zoom call. He does. He always does.
Well, let's there's two questions here. They're really different. So the first one is like directly going from what we were just talking about. So it's like, is there room for delightful digressions in a novella?
Digressions from what? I don't understand.
Sorry, it's from the Discord, and it's, is there room for delightful digressions?
Does the novella have to be like straightforward, plot driven, or can you like have fun with it?
I think you can interpret that.
Yes, you can. No, I mean, I think I try to inject my own kind of sordid humor into it, at least into the voice, whether or not it's the actual events of the story. But yeah, I mean, like if you like, paragraph long derailments into this or that interesting historical factoid, just make sure it's interesting, but also make sure that it's not occupying space that you absolutely need to be using to, further develop these elements of your story. Otherwise, it's not going to land.
Yeah.
I think that's true for any length of story as well. Like sometimes digressions are delightful only to the author. I've been called out for this many, many times. But so like something that my editor said recently about a scene that I had to cut, which was sadly like kind of the sexiest scene in the story that I'm writing right now, was just like, everything in your story needs to do multiple things. And it's great that this one scene is like, it's kind of horny and, I'm for that, but it needs to do more than just be horny, for example.
Alas. That was all my comment, was just alas. Yeah. There's one comment, we missed one question earlier, which was, did folks sell their novellas using an agent?
No.
No, Dave probably wishes that I did, so I'd have someone to ask my questions to, but no.
No, it was fine.
Go ahead, Elliot.
Not my first, but my subsequent ones, yes.
My answer is sorta. This weird thing happened when I sold my short story collection to a small press. It included Fina in it. Originally, it's been replaced because I had also submitted it to Tor.com's open submission period for novellas, and I had withdrawn it from Tor when I signed the contract with Design Press. But in the meantime, I had also gotten Dongwon Song as an agent, and they called me like 2 days after I had signed. They're like, did you send something into Tor? Carl wants it. So I had to swap it. It was a weird thing. And now I have an agent, and I sold my novella to Tor.com with an agent after that.
That's still a really good story, Nino.
It's really funny.
Yeah. So we've got 5 minutes. So our send off true false here is, I think it's uncontroversial, but the novella is the perfect length to read in one long sitting. True or false? Trues across the board. What I want to hear. I don't know what I would have done if someone said false.
Well, you can read a novel in one sitting, but I mean, I can. But
I can do it with
Depends on
some
how
lighter
fast a reader.
novels, but yeah, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes like when you manage to like start a novella and then you just kind of stay up later than you should because it's so good, and then you get to finish it, there's something just really satisfying about that one long like pull, you know?
I actually try to not start novellas late at night because I'm like, there's no good place to pause. That means I must just go on, right? And then it's 4 a.m. and I'm like, well, no regrets, but
Especially if they don't have chapters and you're like, there's literally nothing to stop me.
yeah.
No rules.
And, you know,
just
it's
highway.
not long, right? I could just get to the end if like I had a few more pages.
So with our like remaining 3 minutes, any parting words of wisdom or things that you're excited about that you want to tell people about?
I will just remind folks that Stone and Steel is coming out September 5th, and you should buy it. Shouldn't you? Yes, look at it. It's beautiful. Look at this beautiful black lady on the cover.
Everyone should. Does anyone else want to name a novella and see if Nino just happens to have it in their pile?
Do it. I dare you.
Black God's Drums.
What was it?
Black God's
The
Drums.
Black God's Drums.
No, I do not have that one.
Oh, so now we just get to shame you.
How dare you?
Shame.
I can do like some of the other ones that I do have in the pile that I haven't
Yes, please.
pulled out. I mean, there is the rest of the Tensor series. I don't think I've read this one. I think this is the newest one. Descent of Monsters. Oh, Ballad of Black Tom. This is so good.
That's great, yeah.
It's so good. I think I've assigned this in like every literature class that I've ever had to teach. Ever volunteered to teach. Title Story from Magic for Beginners is definitely a favorite. Carmen Maria Machado's Husband Stitch, I think, is a novella. I'd have to double check. And I think also her 272 views of Law and Order SVU.
Oh yeah, that one was great.
Oh, it's so good.
So good. Yeah, it really deconstructs the whole like narrative of Law and Order and all these different episodes really successfully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I probably have others, but I think we're pretty much out of time.
I'm just trying to figure out if they wanted us to keep going until curtains or if they want us to put a nice bow on it.
Let's put a bow on it.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all, for joining us. This is a bow on it. That means that we're done.